And welcome to Windows on the World and the COVID Conspiracy Club. Tonight, more on, guess what? Well, road restrictions, the Great Reset, and of course, protest as a tool for control and the biometrics industry. But first, a bit of comedy. Pig-eyed dimwit with his nose in the trough, Matt Hancock, warns Britain is at a tipping point in the COVID fight. Londoners could be told to work from home this week and refuses to rule out total lockdown as ministers unveiled £10,000 fines and £500 stay-at-home payment to fight rise in cases. Cases. That's the C word. Well, actually, the tipping point has been and gone, and the credibility of the COVID scam went over the cliff and has been in free fall for months. Stay at home, save lives. It's all come unstuck. It won't go back into the bottle now. But let's look at the real story first. The real story behind the now discredited cover story. This is from biometricupdate.com. Touchless biometric identification and authentication for resumption of work, shopping and travel. From retail biometric systems to health certification based on facial recognition for touchless traveller processing in airports, the contactless systems for economic reopening are the through line for many of the top stories in the digital identity ecosystem this week. So say the technocrats who also have their huge noses in the huge trough of the biometrics industry. Quite fascinating. This has been talked about ever since the COVID scam started. And it was stated when it started that the biometric industry was surfing the wave of COVID-19. Well, there's a lot of waves to surf and there's billions to be made. It says the new workforce management products from Iris ID, read it and weep, and Naimi, a biometric payment card partnership formed by Zwipe and MasterCard executives, take on the progress towards a cashless society. They show the speed of the shift towards remote identification and authentication. So there you go. That's the real story behind the nonsense spouted by the pig-eyed dimwit. Members of US Congress from both parties have come together to advance a new bill to start working on interoperable digital ID that people can use for interactions with the government. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't think I want to have any interactions with the government anymore. It carries on. A task force standards creation by NIST, and grants through the Department of Homeland Security would help improve digital identity in the country. I bet it would. Retailers are deploying biometrics to help safely resume business and compete with e-commerce vendors. Look at the way this is being spun. It's fantastic, isn't it? Isn't COVID a massive enabler of change? It says new solutions developed by QNAP and KABN, each stemming from partnerships, provide facial recognition for retail signage and digital ID check-ins respectively, while emotion analysis provider Entropic has raised $8 million in funding, and NEC has launched a proof of concept of a real retail analytics system in Indonesia. Well, imagine that, retail signage, facial recognition for retail signage and digital ID check-ins. The latest in a series of patent filings from fingerprint cards published in the US shows the company has been working on a way to improve the biometric performance of fingerprint systems in consumer electronics. Well, haven't they been busy? They're so productive in this sector. You have to tip your hat to them, really, don't you? Surfing the wave of COVID-19. The image enhancement technique, it says, involves multiple images and low-pass filters, biometric devices storing all user data locally will make up locks and other parts of the smart homes, providing some assurance of data privacy to the many consumers for whom concerns on the topic are a barrier to adoption. No kidding. Fingerprint Cards, the company, argues in an article on its website that this is what they're going to do. Biometric devices storing all user data locally will make up locks and other parts of the smart homes. Fantastic. This is what the local councils always wanted. The local councils that are getting bigger, that are going to be part of the new global governance system, which according to useful change agents who work in councils is a conspiracy theory. But they're talking about it in their Zoom meetings. They're talking about the Global Action Plan online. So, really, it's not a conspiracy theory. Welcome to the COVID Conspiracy Club. Let's see what else it says on biometricupdate.com. A partnership with NVIDIA and Convergent Technologies have led Chooch AI to a breakthrough in edge AI response speed. And co-founder and CEO Emre Gutulkin says in an interview with Biometric Update that a lot of early developer interest in edge interferencing is related to facial recognition and biometric liveness. Isn't it great knowing the word salads of the biometric industry? Vision Box Biometrics will be used to screen passengers arriving at the Winnipeg airport through the Nexus program, and airports in Malaysia and India have announced plans to deploy similar technology to cut down on physically close interactions between travellers and staff. Facial recognition is also part of a newly accredited health safety program at Hong Kong Airport, and residents of all 50 states can now get real ID compliant driver's licenses, meaning they can use them for domestic commercial airline travel. Lawsuits over the use of images in a training data set to reduce demographic disparity in facial recognition, what a word salad, accuracy, it says here, against Amazon and Microsoft should be thrown out, the companies argue. Yeah, I mean, we don't want anyone standing in the way. No one's going to be left behind. We can't have legalities getting in the way of global governance, can we? The companies argue this, that any legal arguments should be thrown out as they neither collected the biometric data from state residents nor used it in state. This is part of a training data set to reduce demographic disparity in facial recognition accuracy, it says here. Related cases have been brought against IBM and Google. Data privacy law expert David Oberle of Blank Rome LLP explains in Biometric Update guest post how companies can avoid being targeted by biometric privacy lawsuits. They've got it all laid out. So any legal action taken against them is going to be rebuked by the biometric industry. Oberle breaks down the legal landscape and provides a list of compliance tips for Biometric Update readers. So if you're in the biometrics industry, get onto that. Get onto David Oberle at Blank Rome LLP, and he'll tell you how to get rid of all liability and get rid of any uncomfortable legal challenges which might stand in the way of your Antichrist system. Oh, welcome to the COVID Conspiracy Club. Well, this is what COVID is all about. It's nothing else to it, really. I've had some great info from listeners this week. Someone's just sent me this. Rom just sent me this. And it's been tweeted by Wandsworth Council. It says, a grab bag is a bag full of emergency items in case you need to flee your home immediately without time to pack. Some of the items that are suggested for the bag include a first aid kit, batteries, a whistle and a torch. Grab and go bag, it says here. It's got an emergency backpack. Pen and notepad. I always take a pen and notepad everywhere, me. Torch. Yeah, I always take a torch. First aid kit. No, actually, I don't bother with my first aid kit too much. Personal toiletries. Well, anyone who knows me very well will realise that those are often the last things on my list. Seasonal clothing. Yeah, it depends where I'm going, I suppose. Phone charger and battery pack. Actually, seasonal clothing, yeah, because I've been going out in my t-shirt and shorts. And I have been taking a bag out with a pair of long trousers and a shirt in case I have to go out in the evening and look like a citizen, you know. phone charger and battery bank, food and water, a whistle and an emergency plan. I never go out without an emergency plan, do you? But there's actually nothing that sinister about this, but it's all to do with this website called 30 Days, 30 Ways. And it's a kind of exercise of training, and they give you these tasks that you have to do, and it's like a pyramid scheme, and then you have to get 30 people to do it, get your friends to do it, and up to 30 people each person. So it's like a pyramid scheme of monitoring how people react to emergencies. It says on their website, it's called this is called stay at home. No, it's not. It's called 30 Days, 30 Ways. If you look that up, it all comes up. I've only just looked at this before the show, actually. I thought I'd put it in, though. It says, staying home to stay safe for several months. I wonder what that would be like. Oh, wait. Many did just that this year. Fortunately, we did not have to face stay in home without power and our devices. Well, of course, the millennials and other useful idiots were saying that, well, they had Netflix and they had some wine so they could stay in and just get drunk with their friends. Great survival strategy, that one, isn't it? Folks, it says here, still had options to binge their favourite TV series or create the new viral sensation on TikTok. It's a good job we're dealing with highbrow intellectuals here, isn't it? But what a difference it would have been if we would have had to face the past several months without those devices, if we did not have a cell signal, Wi-Fi or electricity. Well, some of us have actually been planning for that for quite some time. I mean, I've got candles and everything. Let's get on to some interesting stuff now from other listeners. This is from Simon. I live in a village just outside Cambridge, and I can see what is going on in Cambridge with Dutch roundabouts, roads being narrowed for cycles, speed limits being lowered. They want a high-speed train between Oxford and Cambridge. The new housing developments in and around Cambridge are all using high-density housing and apartment blocks, same as everywhere else, Simon. It's catching on, this, isn't it? The smart city gulags. Everything you have been discussing, says Simon, is clearly going on. Well, actually, Simon, yeah, thanks for sending this in because it's great. And other people have been sending me all this stuff about the road closures, about exactly what we've been talking about. And COVID-19, the COVID-19 Conspiracy Club, is a driver of all of these changes. He says, I'm on my local parish council. Good for you. People should get on their local parish councils if they can. I know it's breathtakingly boring and a complete waste of time, but what if we became the change that we wanted to see and we became change agents rather than letting these dim-witted useful idiots do it? He says, I also see the way councils are being merged into larger areas. Yes, we've been talking about this for a long time. If you look at this, it's happened all over the country. And of course, it's to take away any form of public liability. They're removing public liability everywhere. Well, just look at the vaccine. Just look at the biometric industry. Oh, wait a minute. It is, isn't it? This is the COVID Conspiracy Club. It says police and fire services are also merging and mayors being put in place. Yes, we have these council of global mayors. And if you look at ICLEI, which is Local Government for Sustainable Development, let's see if I can remember what it stands for. International Community of Local Environmental Initiatives, or International Committee or something, or Independent Committee. Look it up for yourselves. That ICLEI, it's really hard to remember what it stands for because it's just known as Local Government for Sustainable Development, basically. Also, I've got to thank Jay in Walthamstow, my old mate Jay from Walthamstow, who's actually living on the borders of Mini Holland in Walthamstow, and he challenged Majid Nawaz on LBC about the Mini Holland and high-density gulags, or, as he would like to call it, that's Majid Nawaz, a vibrant community, where you can walk for 20 minutes in any direction. Well, can't you do that anywhere? I do it all the time. But, yeah, it's quite interesting, actually. Jay got some good points in there. And Nawaz actually listened, but then, of course, he turned it round and said, well, what would you do about it? The big communitarian we don't like what you are saying. Yeah. Let's have a look at this. This is from Anthony. He said, hi, Mark, grabbed this paper yesterday. I thought you'd be interested. I live in Clapham, which which is Lambeth Council, and the same rubbish is happening as Wandsworth Council. This looks like a small victory at least. He says, I'm totally fed up with what's happening in my local area. The roads are permanently congested and locals can't get around anywhere without being stuck in traffic, even on Sundays. Keep up the good work. Well, thanks, Anthony, for this. Because Anthony sent me some very encouraging newspaper articles from the Wimbledon and Wandsworth Times. And they report that their low traffic neighbourhood, that's what they call these schemes at the moment, has been suspended. It was also reported that low traffic neighbourhood schemes cause confusion and long traffic queues. This is, of course, the idea, but applying a bit of the Saul Alinsky technique and scaring the council into the retreat is, as Alinsky himself would say, a successful outcome. So do try it. Use the Saul Alinsky method back on them. If you don't know who Saul Alinsky was, he was a housing campaigner in the 60s who did radical kinds of attacks. In other words, nothing was off the charts. And he used a lot of psychology, relentless attacks, and he got people to basically use low-level terrorism, really, to get what they wanted. And the result of all that was seen in 2010 when Cameron announced as part of the big society, and Obama in America, that the Saul Alinsky method would be used. So have a look through Rules for Radicals. It gives case studies of how Saul Alinsky had successes. And it's a bit rambling, but if you read the 13 Rules for Radicals, you'll get some idea of how change agents work. The one that they don't adhere to, which Alinsky actually said was the most powerful, or one of the most potent weapons, was humour is a man's best weapon. Have you noticed that these useful idiots do not have any sense of humour? That's part of being mentored by artificial intelligence, I suppose. Can't be ambiguous. Humour can be ambiguous, you see. And also, all of these hierarchical organisations, like the intelligence services, you can't use humour. You can only use ad hominems and personal attacks. Has to be definite. You know, that definiteness, choose your side. Choose your side. Yeah. He says it was also reported, yes, that the low traffic networks, what are the neighbourhood schemes, are being suspended. Yeah, that is very, very, very good. The traffic is also being increased. That's the point I wanted to make, by the rephasing of traffic lights. Have you noticed this? I noticed driving through Hackney the other day that a traffic light that used to stay on for at least a minute or two is now just letting 2 or 3 cars through, causing a massive tailback. Yes. And of course, what about the non-existent roadworks? Have you noticed this? I mean, they've always had these things, what should we do? Oh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, let's put some cones out. But they're actually doing it all day long now. So, roads are being clogged up on purpose for the purpose of getting you off the road. So walk, cycle, enjoy. Now, the COVID action plan. According to the puppet masters at the World Economic Forum, the world must be more resilient, and people will, after COVID, demand more security. I don't know about you, but I'm demanding more security everywhere I go. There will be a need for much stronger global cooperation by those enforcing the biggest scam in living memory. You've got to love the rhetoric, though. The jailers are so sure the prisoners will not want to leave. They want them tagged and locked down with no access to anything outside what they are to be given. So why do you doubt them, dear listener? Why are you so full of hate? Did you know we need to be more sustainable because the next crisis is already waiting for us? The next crisis, according to Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, is already waiting for us. This is known as future shock. You keep traumatizing the population until they'll accept anything. Well, according to the World Economic Forum, well, they should know, shouldn't they? They invited it along and invented it. The next crisis, that is, along with the elite think tanks and great philanthropists such as the World Bank. And according to the inventors of our future shocks and current crisis, we will shortly be resuming the climate change agenda. How dare you? You stole my future. This is, of course, the preferred driver of change and, of course, the agent of psychological abuse. Why are you being so selfish? Don't you want to be sustainable? The use of pandemics, though, is not new. It's actually very old. In fact, pandemics were talked about over 100 years ago as a useful tool of control and governance. Also, of course, the climate agenda, the agenda of getting people to feel good about saving the planet whilst relinquishing all of their inalienable rights, is not new either. This goes back well over 100 years. But isn't it great that those that we trust in have a plan? The World Economic Forum have their 3 R's. Restrain, which they say means to fight the virus, but in reality means to restrain those who want to resist this essential driver of change. In other words, the COVID action plan. Recover is the second of the 3 R's, to go back to a kind of new normal. I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. This is what they call complete cognitive dissonance and a psychological warfare attack. To go back to a kind of new normal. So there'll be something that you remember, but most of it you won't. The new kind of normal, which will have you tagged and imprisoned in a smart city, monitored and controlled in real time, living in poverty on social credit. Can't wait. Reset, that's the third one, which they say is to refine and define the strategy which should lead us in the after-corona phase. As we know, there will be no after-corona phase, and the restrictions, lockdowns, compliance testing and collapse of the world economies, plus the enslavement of all through biometric ID, is already, as we started out the show with, already in place. The testing of it globally has been thoroughly inefficient, but this is a real-time computer simulation, an ongoing exercise. Everything is happening in real time. Yes, they're making mistakes and they're adjusting it in real time. We're part of a giant computer game. That's exactly what this is all about. They're just testing compliance and testing the strategies. No, it doesn't make sense and doesn't have to, because it is a warfare program built mainly around constant change and the interruption of all activities. The whole scenario of future shock has been used pretty consistently throughout this. How many shocks does it take, though? Well, according to the World Economic Forum, not enough until we demand more physical security, health security, until we become more inclusive. In other words, universally compliant and accepting of the new slave system that's being imposed. The World Economic Forum is a partner of the UN global governance system since 2019 and a driver of the fourth industrial revolution. So the Great Reset, this book, was recently published by the World Economic Forum, authored by its founder Klaus Schwab and Thierry Malloret. And it describes the technocratic future being enabled by all who are going along with the COVID-19 action plan. According to Schwab and the WEF, the effect of COVID-19 will be, get this, wait for it, more similar to a world war. Another quote, look at the debt we are putting on our shoulders, says Klaus. On whose shoulders? Our shoulders. Whose shoulders? Our shoulders. Whose streets? Our streets. Choose your side. So he says, look at the debt we are putting on our shoulders. $10 trillion will be added to our debt load. Our? Who's the big we, Klaus? Oh, of course, it's communitarianism. No one will be left behind. Which will have to be repaid by future generations, he says. He also says 50% of the world's population will be affected by COVID-19 and the fourth industrial revolution. The World Economic Forum say the world must be more resilient. People will demand more security. Of course they will. They'll demand biometric ID, monitoring of all actions in real time, a lifetime of surveillance and poverty, whilst being harvested and then terminated when necessary. This is the true meaning of sustainability, population control and reduction. That's all it's about. It's a business plan. At the World Economic Forum Global Leaders Summit page, go to the World Economic Forum website, weforum.org, it states, COVID-19 has highlighted the fact, it's a fact here, is there, that our previous systems were neither equitable or sustainable. This is a bit subversive, isn't it? What they do not say is that the new system can never be equitable or sustainable either. These words have, of course, been hijacked and used like all the others in the limited word salad and restricted vocabulary of the drones who will be replaced with artificial intelligence. The purpose of all drivers of governance in the new system are to influence the global decision-making process and create new leadership so we seize this critical moment in history. I'll read that out again because I've seen this somewhere before, going back to documents such as Our Common Future. But this is actually from the Wild 11 conference, which was held mainly online due to COVID. That's the Wilderness 11 conference, where 50% of the world's land and oceans were going into private ownership. Well, they don't say it's private, they say it's stewardship. Isn't stewardship a great name for ownership? That's communitarianism. Yes, to influence the global decision-making process and create new leadership so we seize this critical moment in history, and how they are doing that and have been for such a long time, creating new leadership in everything, absolutely everything, and it doesn't matter. So choose your side. Even if you're one of the outliers, you will have your leadership given to you. It has been the same mantra that's been repeated for the last 40 years in documents which drive the new system under the guise of sustainable development, a system of management and control of all resources, including, of course, human resources. The United Nations Environmental Programme was the principal agent of change. Public-private partnerships and NGOs work as part of the global governance structure from global to local. This is the point. Unstructured global governance is not world government. So people who say there's a one world government are 1% right, 99% wrong. But because there's only 1% of the population who will say that, they will be silenced by the 99% anyway. The real term is global unstructured governance, which is in all of these documents, and it is talked about at all of their conferences. Change Agents Unlimited stated in Parliament in 2011 that the results of the cuts would be anger. The idea of the big society was to galvanise that energy before it could take hold. In other words, control all opposition. As Demos say, Demos is a public policy think tank full of useful idiots. They said the new democracy will work with a combination of government open infiltration and citizens groups taking direct action. Yes, we've covered that on the one or two shows. I've put that one in, but always worth repeating. This means, of course, controlling all public opinion through public participation. That's communitarianism. The psychological society needs simplistic narratives for increasingly simplistic minds. Minds are made simple and kept simple through the absolute brainwashing, which is the simplest type of psychological warfare. From climate change to COVID, the drivers are simple because they have to be. The assault on the mind through the media has to be the message. Now, journalism. The lost art, the lost and forgotten art of journalism. The loss of journalists in the media has been one of the most noticeable strands of the new system. Devoid of intelligence and with zero input, they repeat a bunch of cliches and word salad, all centred around the goals of global governance and sustainable development. There is an obvious inability to process information, and the ability to construct an argument is non-existent. This has backfired on the artificial intelligence community. Their repeaters are too one-dimensional to convince. The dullness has reached saturation point everywhere. All newspapers contain the same story, the same corridor of accepted globalist intolerance and, of course, denial of facts. The fact deniers are petty-minded because they have to be. If they were not one-dimensional and without content, they would, of course, be useless in this system. The allowed voices of dissent, though, are even worse. Take the likes of Peter Hitchens, who will never isolate the real issues, just pose as indignant, whilst failing to address the real causes of the allowed voices of fake dissent. For every fake voice of dissent, there are 1,000 robotic repeaters and petty-minded liars who've been indoctrinated into insincerity. when the very institutions these media whores attend are funded by those giving them their reality, it really does start to become predictable. And in actual fact, too predictable. Is there anyone out there? Well, no one will be recognised by the mass brainwashing machinery unless they are there to be attacked and ridiculed. A short break and I'll be straight back.
You're welcome to Windows on the World, and the concept of how Earth run today. Because today, the way the world run today, they're not running by the law of life. Because the law of life is just one law. But they create their law to go around the law of life.
Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and programme stream at windowsontheworld.net. Oh, that was quick, wasn't it? No time to lose. We are in the final days. Well, I think we've been through the final days and we're out the other side now because we are in the post-truth world. But is there anyone out there? Well, no one who will be recognised by the mass brainwashing machinery, as we said before the break, unless they are there to be attacked or ridiculed. So anyone who is favoured by the communitarian hate mongers of collectivism is either counterintelligence or just a useful idiot. The artificial intelligence drone in charge of counterintelligence at the publication known as the UK Independent is called Lizzie Dearden. Should be just called Lizzie Dreary, but never mind. And this female robot has been allocated the role of, guess what? Home Affairs correspondent. The AI-sourced word salad printed in that infomercial for globalism known as the UK Independent stated, and this is all about Saturday in Trafalgar Square. Hundreds of conspiracy theorists and, of course, QAnon supporters. I don't quite know what the connection is there, but I'm sure there is one in the minds of the artificial intelligence drones who have their word salads implanted. Hundreds of conspiracy theorists have gathered in central London to protest against coronavirus restrictions in the UK. Wait for it, as infections worsen. Who put that into a highly inactive and minuscule biometric brain? Don't know. Maybe it was the editor. Scuffles broke out as police moved in on demonstrators in Trafalgar Square who formed human blockades in an attempt to prevent arrests and initially forced officers to move back. This was quite interesting because I didn't actually attend this one, but I watched several live streams. And there were agent provocateurs there from the start. Oh, yes, you know what they were saying, don't you? When they saw the police, you'll never guess what they said to them. They were so original. They had this original chant and they kept saying it. They kept saying, choose your side, choose your side. And there was even somebody who was streaming, and I watched his stream, and he was going, scum, filth. And there was these hippie-ish looking idiots with backpacks, and they were very similar to the hippie-ish looking idiots which worked for the intelligence services during Occupy. I'm not saying they're the same ones. I'm saying they're out of the same mould. So in other words, the whole idea of this was to cause a riot, which they didn't really manage to do. Demonstrators advanced on police, it says, while shouting, choose your side. Yes, it's in there, it's in there. And some were seen throwing objects at officers during a largely peaceful demonstration on Saturday afternoon. There you go. So, as we predicted through our very own Windows on the World algorithms, the useful idiot and change agent who was installed to apparently lead the protest has proved to be an asset of the police state after all. Who would have thought? After me last two shows, I never would have thought it. I'm so disillusioned. I'll never look at another change agent again. An agent provocateur suffering from high esteem and narcissism. How original. Have we seen those before? I think we have. They come and go, don't they? They arrive, they get loads of publicity, they even get into the mainstream press. But has Windows on the World ever been in the mainstream press? No, but we've been abused by Hope Not Hate. It's the next best thing. Shouting for the crowd to confront the police, it says, who are parked up in vans. It carries on and on and on. But basically comparing every daft conspiracy theorists and Elvis lives on the moon with who was there, of course. Yes, our recent shows, or our Regent shows, on the manipulation of what is called protest are in the archive. COVID Puppets and Protest for COVID Plan. Those are the last two, plus the show I did with Kieran Boyle from Alternative News in Ireland called Organising a Protest. That's what Kieran called it, although the show wasn't really about organising a protest. It was what to watch out for when organising a protest and the pitfalls of protest and what it really is. Because obviously the revolutionary spirit is a big part of the state narrative. Choose your side. Yes, so organising a protest, they all outlined, all those shows, exactly what was used over the weekend. Group dynamics are well known to the social engineers and the public respond accordingly. This is why I've been talking about strategy. It is outside the artificial intelligence of the system, and apparently those who have been allowed to lead the dissenters into the trap which we were actually warning about. So yes, they do have a strategy, but the strategy is to lead you nowhere and to get the group absolutely despondent. Oh, that didn't work. What are we going to do now? Well, it wasn't meant to work in the first place. So use the strategy. Strategy means you have an intended outcome and you work towards it. And of course, you need a decoy. So make them think you're going one way and then go another. Strategy is not known to the reactionary, though. Fake revolutionaries, ego-driven useful idiots, they do tend to have a very limited intelligence, a bit like the artificial intelligence of the robot journalists on the communitarian press. The intelligence services are even using the chosen idiot and have done an interview with her. Would the Mail Online ever interview anyone who was not part of the controlled narrative? Of course not. Well, maybe it's time to start a Global Vision Institute. The UN have one, and theirs is rubbish. Be the change you want to see. But on top of numbers turning up to protest next week, is there a possibility to do a hard track and trace of everyone who attends, says Eddie from Kentish Town. He sent me this, it's very good this. On top of numbers turning up to protest next week, is there a possibility to do a hard copy track and trace of everyone who attends? No, he's not working for the globalists. He's not surfing the wave of COVID-19 for biometric ID companies. He says, i.e., if X amount of thousands of people cram into Trafalgar Square, you can be sure that the media will be saying how such irresponsible behaviour has added to a spike in COVID cases. However, if we could install a temporary system where everyone that goes registers in a voluntary and inclusive way, it's got to be vibrant as well, Eddie, you've left that out, where details can be used but kept secret and used as data, this is a good strategy. He says, I'm hoping some bright spark out there would know how this might work. Blockchain technology of some kind, ? He says. Then free software could provide evidence that X amount of thousands of people attend a protest in central London, and we would have scientific evidence from each individual that no one got the virus from attending. So that would actually scupper their narrative, wouldn't it? Absolutely. I mean, all those irresponsible people who went to, show an interest in their future. Well, they didn't actually contribute to the, stretching credibility here, cases of COVID-19. He says a sort of way of turning track and trace on its head and suddenly making it a friend, not the enemy. Choose your side. This is what we've been talking about in using the tactics and deployments of the other side. So the new paradigm of interconnectedness does leave some behind. Thank goodness for very small mercies. Well, I'll be back on Tuesday and Thursday on republicbroadcasting.org at 8 p.m. And hopefully I'll be doing some live streams. I'm also doing the Richie Allen show at 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday. I haven't been on there for ages, so plenty to catch up with there. And thanks for listening, everybody. And do keep sending me in your fantastic ideas, because we need to think outside the box. So, until the next show, choose your side. See you in a bit, everybody. Thanks. Bye.